Hello, my name's Sandy Hood, and this is a recording looking at how to answer a CIMA operational case study past question. Within the operational case studies at operational level, then we're looking at 4 main sections and typically 2 or 3 tasks per section. So this particular case study question that we're going to look at and how to tackle it in the time allowed is on the topic of ABC, and it's ideally going to be helpful in terms of preparing you to answer other operational case study questions on other pre-seen material. To make the most of this, I recommend that you access the pre-seen material for the May 2017 set of variants. The company is called Ashworth Lea, and I've given you the address on this particular slide. It's the connect cimaglobal.com and then OCS May. The other one is the actual variant that we're looking at today. You don't need to access this, but you may choose to. It would be quite useful. These, of course, are only available to you if you are a registered CIMA student. Right, here, this particular variant, 4 sections. First section was worth 45 minutes, second one 45 minutes, third 35 minutes, and fourth 55 minutes. And within any case study exam, there's no additional time given for reading. The reading, planning and writing should all be done within the time limits stipulated, and because it's controlled by the computer, you will simply be shut down if you go over the time. So in other words, if you're on section 1 and you're on your 45th minute, then the time will run out and you'll be told that you must start section 2. We're looking at section 2. We need to think now about how much time we should allocate to reading and planning, how many tasks we need to do in the remaining time. Here is a copy of the data that was provided for this particular section. There's no intention here that you should be able to read it. If you are, then that's a bonus, but it's very small font. But I can now go into more detail and identify, first of all, that there are 2 tasks, that these tasks should fit into a report. The idea of it being in a report is useful because it will generally earn you some people criteria marks. And within the report, one task is that how would the specific requirements of 2 international accounting standards apply in the context of this particular company. And the second one, which we are interested in, is how could we use the activity information given in a schedule, which I will show you in a minute, to produce product costings for the cars, and also provide suggestions and explanations for appropriate cost drivers. So we were talking about how much time to allocate. Well, you would typically allocate 20% plus. So in this case, I've got between 9 minutes and 12 minutes that I would allocate for my reading and planning. And given that it makes it fairly easy for me to split the time allocated to the 2 tasks within the section, I'm going to opt for 11 minutes of planning, and that leaves me with approximately 17 minutes for each task. Right, in this recording, it's unrealistic in terms of the exam, as we're only going to look at 1 task. In the real exam, you would need to plan for the whole section, but I think that would make this particular recording too long. So here we're just looking at the second of the 2 tasks, and I think it's useful because it's a good way of looking at the technique. Use short paragraphs, typically 3 to 4 short sentences. Decide what you will write when you plan and put headings onto the document. This is one of the big advantages that we have over pen and paper based exams, is that of course you can expand or contract the space that's allocated because it's on a Word document. Every paragraph must be in the context of the business and must develop the point raised. Otherwise, you're not writing in the context of the company. And if you write a theoretical answer, you won't be able to expect very many marks. How many paragraphs? Well, on the basis of 1 paragraph per mark, which I think is a good way of looking at it, 13 paragraphs would be the maximum. 8 good paragraphs would be a pass. And if we organise our time to answer each task, then 8 paragraphs in 17 minutes is about 2 minutes per paragraph. This particular question has come from the P1 syllabus. It's an ABC question. ABC looks for the use of activity information to produce product costings for our cars and suggestions and explanations for the appropriate cost drivers for each of the activities. And this is from the syllabus A, part 1, cost accounting systems, where we're asked to compare and contrast activity-based costing with traditional marginal and absorption costing methods. And here, product and service costing using an ABC system is part of the indicative content. Here we are with the question: how could we use the activity information given in our schedule to produce the product costings for our cars? Please also provide the suggestions and explanations. We're given here the actual schedule that was specified within the task, and it shows that there are 3 activities that we're looking at: a cleansing, sealing and cavity wax application, with a description of the activity of each. Cleansing: vehicle bodies have to be pre-treated before the paint can be applied. One part of the pre-treatment is cleansing, which is intended to remove contaminants which may have been in the body shop from the product. This is performed over a series of water and cleansing solution rinses. Each of the vehicles receives the same number of rinses. Second one, sealing. Prior to the coating of the vehicle body with primers and paint, the seams of the body are sealed to protect against weather effects on the body. A sealant compound is applied along the length of each seam of the car's body, and the sealant is then baked onto the seam. And finally, cavity wax application is to proof the vehicles as much as possible against corrosion. A waterborne, cold applied cavity wax is injected into body sections and panel inners of the vehicles. Infrared lights heat that up. They heat up the bonnet, the boot lid or the hatch to warm the cold wax, to encourage it to flow into the corners and points where the water might. That way they're able to achieve that protection against corrosion. Now, stop the recording. You've got 5 minutes to draw up a plan for this task. Go back to the previous slide for the task requirements, start the clock, and then stop when you finish planning. Okay. Now, the headings are going to be written on your Word document. The planning's done, and here's my plan. We've got 6 sections, including overhead costs in car production will be my first, then cost pools and cost drivers, cleansing, sealing, cavity wax application, and then how overhead costs would be incorporated. I've got 6 headings. If I get 2 paragraphs in some of them, then I'm going to be able to achieve my target of getting 8 paragraphs written. If I'm able to manage the time particularly well, I might even get slightly more than that. Now, quickly check. Does our plan answer the question asked? Let's have a look. How could we use the activity information in the schedule to produce product costings for our cars? Including overhead costs in car production, car pools. So I feel quite comfortable that I am addressing that first element within this task. Provide suggestions and explanations for the appropriate cost drivers. Okay, so I'm talking about cost drivers in my second heading, and the activities in the schedule of cleansing, sealing and cavity wax application are specified plan point 3, point 4 and point 5. So I feel reasonably comfortable that I can now plough into this answer without having to go back and look at the data in any great detail. So use the plan to write the answer. Don't waste time looking back at the original data. Use the headings from the plan and work fast. I know that there are 1 or 2 specifics within the schedule that I will sort of go back to just to get perhaps the odd wording, but I will try not to waste time by looking at that for too long. So stop the recording again. You've got 17 minutes now, And to try and help you with this, I've given you your finish time. So you should have finished all the content under heading 1 by the time you're down to 14 minutes to go. You should have finished all the information that you're writing about both the overhead costs in car production and cost pools and cost drivers by the time you've got 11 minutes left. And then 9 minutes left means that you've finished the cleansing section, and so on and so on. Okay. So stop the recording and start filling in your answer under the headings of the plan. Okay. Here we go. Including overhead costs in car production. The use of activity information can help us to cost each model of car more accurately. We currently are adding 200% of the labour cost to each model, and by changing, we will recognise activities that are required for each model. So this is bringing in pre-scene material. The pre-scene material didn't blatantly state that it's 200%, but it didn't take much to identify from that pre-scene material that it was a 200% overhead portion. Then the budgeted cost of each model car will include the overheads that the model requires. There's 3 models of car. These will be broken down into the cost pools for each activity. The overhead charged to each car for each activity will be based on how much a specific model uses it. Next ones, cost pools and cost drivers. Cost pools are based on the activities that take place in production. Here, costs are necessarily incurred for the activity to take place and pooled. For example, all the costs of running the sealing activity. Then we've got the cost drivers. These are the factors that determine how much a model of car uses the activity's cost pool. So they're critical to the cost assigned from the pool to the car. The greater the use of the cost driver, the higher the cost that will be assigned. Next we've got cleansing. Here, all the costs caused to enable the water and cleansing solution rinses would make up the cost pool. Every model of car receives the same number of rinses. The cost of cleansing would be the same for each car. So this would support the idea of using a cost driver rate per car cleansed. So here our cost driver rate as per the task, second element of the task, is the per car. Sealing. All the costs caused to enable the seams of the body to be sealed and baked would make up the cost pool. The different models of car are different sizes, and the larger the car, the more sealant compound needed and the longer time needed for baking. This would support using a cost driver rate per kilogram of sealant used. Those models using more sealant will create a need for more time on the activity, having the sealant applied and then baked onto the seam. So here we're using a cost driver rate per kilogram of sealant. Cavity wax application. Well, all the costs caused to enable the cavity wax to be injected, including the heating of the wax, would make up the cost pool. So all these costs. The cars are different in sizes. The amount of wax and the amount of heat required will differ according to the size of the body sections and the panel inners of a model. The cost driver rate should be easily measured. The amount of wax needed is specific to each model. So the amount of wax, whether it's in kilograms or whether it's in litres, I guess it's in kilograms, but in an exam you're not always sure, in the amount that's injected would be an effective cost driver to assign all the costs from the cavity wax application activity costs. How overhead costs would be incorporated. So each model of car would be costed based on the direct costs plus the cost driver rate for each activity multiplied by the amount of that activity that it requires. So one of the cars is a Regent. The Regent car will be costed using the amount of wax needed per car times the cost driver rate for cavity wax application, plus the kilograms of sealant times the cost driver rate for that, plus the cleansing cost drive rate per car, because we know that we're doing the cleansing on a car by car basis, and all the other activities and other costs. So that's how we would get a costing for a Regent car. So here another slide where you can't actually see the words, but here is a repetition of all my paragraphs from the previous slides. And how does it look? Well, you can see that we've got a number of paragraphs. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 paragraphs there, all clearly stated in a format that would be compatible with the report, because they're numbered headings. So how would that be treated by an examiner? Well, looking at each of those paragraphs, they've all got application to Ashworth Lea, they've all got development of the point, so we would have got 11 marks. A good use of the time allowed, and what did we do? We read the question, we drew up a plan, we checked the plan against the whether the plan was actually answering the question that we'd been asked. We used the plan headings to write the clear paragraphs, and we didn't allow ourselves to run over on any of those headings, so we were within our time limit all the way. So 11 marks, a good use of that time. We allocated the time to the planning, we allocated the 17 minutes to writing, and achieving 11 marks out of 12 or 13 is very good, and a good use of the time. I hope you found that useful. If you need to contact me, I certainly run quite a lot of operational case study courses. I'm Sandy at sandyhood.com, and I've got a website, www.sandyhood.com, and I'm also on Facebook at www.facebook.com accountancy tutor. Thank you very much.